My direct manager, who I was reporting to, he did not take it well at all. The reaction I felt was a little unprofessional. I think, just said congratulations, and that was it. For the remainder of my notice period, he did not speak to
Wow.
me at all.
Just
Like, not even replying to the good morning. Yeah, it was very, very passive aggressive. Like, we just sit next to each other, and he won't talk to me at all.
Hi, you're listening to The First 2 Years, an early careers podcast from the Ken. I'm Aksha Chandrasekharan. If you've been listening to the podcast since the beginning, you know the title reflects its focus. It's about people in the first 2 years of their careers just starting out. We've talked about the first mistake, first mentor, first promotion, first work friend, and so much else. Because we believe the first 2 years are the foundation of one's career. But for many people, it's not that deep, apparently. The first 2 years are just a stepping stone before they pursue higher education. Just like our listener this week, Priyanksha. You heard from her earlier. She was very dissatisfied with her first job as a software development associate at an asset management company, and she spent 2 years of her career at this company for two reasons only. A, the work experience, which is useful for her MBA application. B, to earn an income and support herself even during her MBA preparation. So, do you remember at what point during your first job you're like, okay, that's it. I'm going to do an MBA. I can't be here anymore. Do you happen to remember that moment?
It was a software development role, and I think within 6 7 months into the job, I knew that this is not what I want to do long term. Like, in the coding space, I wanted to move into more front end
Hmm,
client facing role, and MBA seemed like a very obvious path to
got
take.
it. Soon, Priyanksha started preparing for her MBA exams. She was juggling both work and MBA preparation without letting the employer know. Eventually, after a year of hard work, she cleared her CAT exams, cleared her interviews, and made it to one of the top IIMs. When it was time to confess to the employer, her worst nightmare came true. It did not go well. Her immediate manager did not take it very well. Okay, Priyanksha, I keep calling you Priyanka for some reason. Uh, do you think, had you told them, right, your manager and your other team members, kind of like when you started applying and all of that, and not after you got the offer letter, like, do you think they would have been less angry if they knew it, if you had given them some time or something? Or, like, what do you think made your manager so upset, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, no. Yeah, see, it's tricky, right? No matter how hard you prepare, you put your 110%, and still you don't know what the outcome is going to be like. So, and I wanted to hold on to a job. I did not want to do that, that I quit and then prepare, just because I think I didn't have the risk appetite back then. I didn't want that uncertainty
Hmm.
looming over my head. So, yeah, it was more tackling the present, because I know I have to spend 8 to 9 hours at that job, and I just did not want to make it more difficult for me, as it already
Hmm.
was. And if I tell them that this is something I'm pursuing, obviously the behavior towards you will change, the way you're looked at will change. You're not a team player anymore. You're not working towards the same goal as everyone else is
Yeah.
working in the team. And also, any slack, for whatever reason it might be, it'll be attributed to you not being
Hmm.
100%, if they know that you're preparing for something else, right?
So, this was a very interesting problem to me and a really important one right now. Because there are so many people in their first 2 years maybe thinking of doing an MBA or who are trying to figure out how to make an exit to do an MBA without making it complicated with your current employer. Should you hide your MBA plans because you want to secure both options like Priyanksha, or should you just be candid and straight with it? I reached out to Prasad MS, who leads workforce research and communications at Xfino. He's someone who has a realistic understanding of people and career journeys and gives very actionable advice.
Hey Akshay, happy to be on the show. So, if let's say I have somebody in my team, I would find two kinds of people. One who's had a planned MBA pathway, who kind of also tells you at the interview stage, what are you going to do 2 3 years from now? I say, boss, I want to start working, pick up some experience, do my MBA. So they place this nice placeholder in the conversation, so you know at some point in time this person's gonna plan an MBA is there in your head, and it really helps as an employee to know that he or she is gonna take that pathway is number one. That's a perfectly fine route to be in. But if the other way around, let's say it's a reactive MBS, I would call it for want of a better word. If I've started working, things aren't going well with me, or I feel underqualified,
Dissatisfied with my current,
dissatisfied,
yeah.
or I feel underqualified for what I'm doing, then I think an exit out of this current,
Like an
humdrum,
escape plan.
an escape
Yeah.
route is my MBA, is something that employees also pick up.
Along with Prasad, we'll also talk to Ayush Agarwal, a colleague at the Ken, who's also an IIM alumnus who has a different perspective altogether from Priyanksha's. On today's show, both of them will give many people in Priyanksha's shoes advice on when to tell, how to tell, and why last impressions even matter. And they'll give us some secrets we can use no matter what kind of transition we are making at the end of our first 2 years. Stay with us. We are back, and I'm talking to my colleague Ayush. So, Ayush, I'll just give you a little bit of context, right? This is when most MBA admission season has concluded, and a lot of listeners were emailing me for the last month or so, actually, about how they've come up in the last wait list and they have 48 hours to pay their college fees. How do I tell my employer I want to go and do my MBA? Should I just make up a personal emergency? And some variation of this question about how to tell my employer just kept coming up. And I didn't take it very seriously because I was just like, what's the big deal? Just tell them that you're pursuing higher education and move on, right? And then I spoke to you and you said you also had a great exit. But you also were just like, you caveated that with that's really not everyone's experience, and most often than not, you have a bad exit. So just tell me more about it, right? So I can understand why this is not as straightforward as it looks from the outside.
Right. No, actually, I think I probably count my case as an exception to the norm because, again, coming from back to my conversations with colleagues while I was in IIM, I mean, there are a bunch of stories that I heard about very, very tough exits from the company. And not every manager, not every team takes it. Again, as I said, I consider myself the exception, but in most cases that I know, people hold off letting their current employer know till the last moment because either they are not confident about how this news will be taken. I mean, obviously, it makes sense to go and try it if you feel that you have that relationship with your manager and your team, but that doesn't exist in every case, and therefore, a lot of people hold it out for the last moment to let their company know.
Aish, you told me about how you used to prepare in your office, right? In your cubicle on company time, not company time, after company time. But you used to sometimes, when there's downtime at work, you used to sit and prepare and stuff. And most of your team members knew and they were kind of chill about it. So, did you do something differently from like the other people who are writing in, or Priyanksha, who I spoke to her before you? You know, was it anything that you did personally, or did you just like luck out with a great team and a great manager?
So I think that's very important because once you're out of your undergraduate job, people almost expect you to want to do something more on the education side, whether it's an MTech, whether it's an MBA. And therefore, I think it's always better to sort of have that conversation in some shape or form. Even if you don't want to be very explicit about it, uh, it can always be navigated by saying that I'm interested in doing something in the higher education. Does the company help with it? Should I think what is, and you should take your manager's advice. It just makes them feel even better that, I am sort of guiding their careers as well. So this is something that I did as well, that I asked him for advice based on my performance or very things I should be looking to do my higher education. So it's very important to build that communication and that relationship with them where they are also a part of your decision making because it's only fair that if you require their help later on, you sort of take the efforts to build that relationship with them.
In the past decade or so, many companies have come forward to sponsor its employees' higher education, partially or fully, as a part of its employee benefits program. And they actively encourage their employees to upskill and become relevant. Sometimes even go so far as to guarantee them a job at the same company even after their MBA. It has become open and transparent over the years for sure, because companies are keen on retaining good talent. So, Priyanksha, the thing that I'm noticing, right, from your story is that you were pretty clear from the beginning that you don't want to tell them till you get that admit from your B school and stuff. And, like you must have gotten some signal, right? You must have somehow come to that conclusion that, in this company, I can't say it, they're not going to take it well. And so the reason I'm asking you this is before I spoke to you and others also who had written in, I used to think as an entry level employee, you're not really that important to the company's operations and stuff, right? So they should be on paper okay with it. But so many of you all have decided not to come forward and say it to your employer. So I was wondering what's the reason behind that?
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from, and I think a lot of firms do look at it that way, like we've not invested much in them, and it's okay if they're going, they're going. But I think the firm I was at, they take their new hires very seriously. Uh, it was more kind of a project for them, or maybe just knowing that if they have the right talent, they have to
At all
retain
costs.
them. Yeah, I think I don't think they were coming from a place of we don't want you to pursue higher education. It wasn't that. But I think if they yeah, they have noticed you that okay, you can do good work, we can rely on you, they definitely wanted to hold on to you. I did not want to be in that position again where someone is trying to convince me, and especially when it's not something
Yeah,
sure for me yet. Telling them I'm preparing is something totally different than telling them, okay, I got into
exactly.
this institute or
Yeah.
something, and I'm going there.
Yeah.
Yeah, preparing is it's super risky. And imagine, like, they know you're preparing, they know you have given the exam, like for my first attempt, and I didn't get through. I mean, I think that will change their perception
Yeah.
about me as well. That you're doing well at your job, but hey, you try to do this something and you failed there, right? I mean, I think at least in my mind that was another reason that I don't want to tell anybody or many people also that I'm trying for this, because I don't know what the outcome is gonna
Yeah.
be like right now. Why unnecessarily tell people that this job is not interesting enough for you when you don't know when you'll be able to leave it?
Well, now I went back to Prasad to ask why different companies react differently. How do you gauge their reaction correctly and accurately? Is it the industry? Is it the company? Is it a particular role? Where is it okay and where is it not? Is there like a formula or something to know which industries penalize exits and which companies don't? Please don't tell me it depends. Because I've also typically noticed while reporting, right, that most PEVC firms are and consulting companies are generally more open compared to other companies and stuff, right? So, as an HR recruiter and stuff, do you see any differences so that people listening can kind of be like, oh, okay, this is why they can place it in their context?
Yeah, you'll be very surprised. It's extremely industry agnostic now. The fact that someone has to know, or particularly freshers need to know that there are three contexts that come into play. In a situation like that, one is a personal context. Very clearly, where are you? Why are you doing what you're doing, and what next? Even if it's an MBA decision or MS decision that you're taking, whichever way that is, what is your personal context? What's your urgency? And what is your commitment to doing that? Clearly shows through that entire pathway that you take to keep your employee connected. That's the first context. Second, of course, the enterprise context, right? How much are they invested in you? Are you a fresher who was picked off from campus, and then they've committed 2 years of their time to train you, to make you skilled in a particular space, and have committed expenses on you, spend training wise, whatever, right? So that's a commitment that an employer has shown. Definitely there's an expectation to take it back. The ROI expectation definitely there. Like nobody's there to train and then
It's
send
a
you off.
business.
It's a business
Yeah,
end of
yeah.
the day. Every dollar,
Yeah,
dollar
yeah.
and cent is what it matters. So the
Yeah.
enterprise context of where you are, how much has been invested on you, and where are you in the relevance quotient? How relevant are you in the 2 years or 1 year, 3 year that you're working with them comes into play. Third and most important, the relationship context, Akshay. Whether it's your relationship with the line manager or with your founders or the super bosses, whatever, all of them come into play.
That's like a nice framework, right? I was under the impression it's got to do with the company, industry, or the role. So then there is this question, right? Like, what if it has already happened? Like I told you about all these last minute wait lists, like people trying to negotiate their notice period and stuff. Like, say I haven't heard this podcast at all, and it's already happened. It's too late for me to rewind the clock, go back in time, and take my employer on this journey and stuff, right? So now I'm at this stage. Should I just make up a personal emergency instead of trying to explain to them my personal ambitions and aspirations and stuff? We'll get that answer and hear more about how to handle a last minute exit with a notice period constraint right after this quick break. We are back with Prasad talking about notice period.
Yeah. So look at what's the purpose behind the spirit of the notice period for a moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, the enterprise context comes into play, right? Your personal context. You've joined a company. I made an investment. We've been training you as a fresher. So there's a
Got it.
2 to 4 year kind of a visibility that I have to make the returns come to the company through the investment I made and all of it. And companies don't want to be in a situation where suddenly you have to look for a replacement and then need to retrain somebody. The project is just taking off, but you have to move on. To make an exit smooth from an enterprise context is where the whole notice period comes into play. So that technically, what's important for people is to understand that you are in an agreed contract of employment, which is legally valid. That the sign that you do, the contract, the appointment letter that you sign, what has been given is an instrument that has validity in any context that is there. So every clause in it has teeth, and it has been kept there for a reason.
If you are someone who has somehow managed to quit, negotiate your notice period, and leave, what does it matter that you didn't leave on good terms? Never does a B school ever contact your former employer during B school admissions. I asked Ayush.
Right. So I'll take this in. So again, as I said, I mean, during my internship, I did have to reach back to my employer because my company wanted to verify my previous experience. And again, the relationship that I had with them, which obviously started from the fact that I had a conversation with them very early into my decision to prepare for an MBA, that definitely helped because we left on cordial terms. And I think this is one thing that's very important. People are often frustrated in their first job. The first job is never very, very lucrative. You're right out of undergraduate, and there is frustration. There is frustration, which definitely is, in many, many cases, is one of the reasons why people eventually think of doing an MBA.
Correct.
And if you end up clearing the exam and if you end up getting a good college, there is this tendency, and I say this because I've seen this, heard of many such cases when I was in and this was the case with a lot of my colleagues there, that they it was a relief for them to sort of step out of their job, which is why they didn't make the effort to sort of leave on a very, very friendly note. In fact, for some of them, it was almost like a very, very soft revenge sort of thing that finally I'm out of this place and
Yeah.
I'm done. I will never come back to the office again and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there
Yeah,
is a
revenge
very,
quitting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's very common, and I think that's something that people need to be very, very careful about. That leave on the best of terms because you never know when you might need your manager again.
What do I stand to lose if I don't quit on good terms? Will I need them? And if I do, like in what ways?
I mean, if you don't quit on good terms, and you will definitely at some point of time require your previous employer's help. You might be, they might not pick up your calls. You write mails to them. See, they're not obligated to sort of respond to you once you've left the company. And as a young MBA getting into your first internship, and your future employer is sort of asking you to get these details. you are caught up in a very, very bad situation because now you need the person who you've sort of not maintained a relationship with.
Will I
And
need them?
yeah,
Like, will
you'll
I need,
definitely need them.
like,
I
in
think
what ways?
again for CV point verification, for writing a letter of recommendation, and sometimes they might want the company, your internship company might want to talk to your manager or somebody in your team to sort of verify how your work was, or something that you mentioned in your CV as a project that you
Mm-hmm.
did while you were in the company. They might want to verify that. So there are a bunch of things. Obviously, after your first job post your MBA, the previous experience doesn't matter so much, and you might not need them at that point of time, but you definitely need them when you want to get your first internship and job.
That's so interesting to me, Ayush. You know why? Because I don't think you think through all these milestones when you're quitting, right? You're thinking about the relieving letter. You're thinking, okay, I need all these salary slips to show proof of work and stuff, right? But you obviously need to produce all that. But after that, also there are so many touch points where your future company might establish connection with your former employer, and and you do subsequently need them, right? And I have never done an MBA, so I don't know this. I didn't know that even to put on your CV, like whatever you're putting on your CV, you have to kind of go back and verify it with your former employer, and only then you're allowed to put it on your CV and then go for placements and all of that, right? So there are so many like small things that you need them for, and I don't think you think through all of this. Sometimes, even if you know all the right things to do, fear can just hijack your brain. And you overthink all the reactions you might get. For instance, now when I look back at my first job, and I think to myself, it was my first ever exit interview, it was my first time ever quitting a job, it was my first time making a pivot. But it's not the first time ever for the manager or the company for them to encounter this. There have been so many people who came before me who must have done similar things, and so many people who will come after me who are going to do similar things. So I went back to check in with Priyanksha now that it's been a few years since all of this happened. Do you think is there like an element of overthinking in all of this? Because you kind of like the fear of repercussions, right, is a bit overrated. Is it? Sometimes I'm just like from the outsider point of view where they're like, why don't you just go and ask? It is sometimes as simple, but you just play all the worst case scenarios in your head and you overthink it, and then you overcomplicate the whole thing. When you look back at it, do you ever feel like that like you overthought the whole thing a little bit?
As you're saying, right, even if someone comes and tells me that, okay, I'm in this position, I might get into this great institute, but my worry right now is, how do I tell my employer? I mean, that just
Yeah.
sounds silly. That why is that even a concern? You should just tell and leave. And but I also think, that comes from a place of being a little mature professionally. Especially if it's your first job, right? You're right after college. A job is
Yeah.
a huge deal, and you're taking it way too seriously. You feel you're like really answerable. There's a very, very high sense of loyalty to the firm. Your first job. I've experienced that,
You feel like
and
they
but
took a chance on
as you
you.
grow up, you see the job market. Yeah, no, you realize that, no matter how much they say that we are a family, which just honestly irritates me to the core. But yeah, yeah, they will not stand
Yeah.
up for you. If you are in need, or if there's a bad financial situation and they have
Yeah.
decided to lay off, they will
Yeah.
not think twice before telling you that, listen, this is what
So
it
you need to
is,
look out for
right?
yourself.
Then why are you taking them into so? Yeah, exactly. Like, you just have to be very, very clear that nobody out there is thinking about you. Even I think I was very naive enough to think back then that, my manager is looking out for me and my career, my growth at the firm. I have someone to, really guide me through and take care of it, because I'm just a grad out of college, and this is a senior professional, and I've been mapped to him, and he will help me out. But it took some more time to realize that, okay, nobody really cares. Everyone is just looking out for themselves. You have to look out for yourselves and yourself, and just do what's best for you. The world will not end. The company won't shut down if you leave. They will. You are very, very replaceable. They'll hire someone
Yeah.
within a
Yeah.
month after you leave. You just need to, It's a humbling thing to understand, but you need to realize that you're very replaceable. Don't take yourself or the firm that seriously that it starts affecting your future decisions.
Thanks to Priyanksha for sharing her story and Prasad for all his fantastic advice. Special thanks to my colleague Ayush Agarwal. We're nearing the end of the season for the first 2 years. If you want to hear something specific about exiting the first 2 years, write in. All the information about reaching out is in the show notes below. This episode was written, hosted, and produced by me, Aksha Chandrasekharan, and audio engineering is by Rajiv CN. Thank you for listening. See you next Tuesday.